One of my favorite snippets of research is from the National Association of the Education of Young Children and International Reading Association. I had to read this word for word because it's a long one. But they said it is the talk that surrounds the reading that gives it power, helping children to bridge what is in the story and their own lives rather than just the vocalization of words. So introducing reading into a young child's life and the conversations that it will prompt helps them to make sense of their own lives, especially at a young age.
Hey there, and welcome to the Speechie Side Up podcast. My name is Vanita Litvack, and I am so grateful you're here. I'm an ASHA certified speech-language pathologist, author, and augmentative and alternative communication consultant who is obsessed with helping SLPs like you stop reinventing the wheel and connect with other SLPs in the trenches. Have you ever wondered how other SLPs seem to be doing it all with ease? Well, around here, you'll get to hear firsthand how SLPs are really getting things done while keeping evidence-based practice and self-care in mind. Think of this as a coffee date with your SLP friends. Get ready to be challenged and encouraged while we learn together. Today, I'm joined by Sarah Breshears, an SLP with clinical experience in acute care, inpatient rehab, outpatient peds and adults, schools, and private practice. And that's just the beginning. After drumming up social media content and weaving the online SLP community together behind the short and sweet speech brand, she took her career to new heights and founded Social Moguls, a social media management company for medical professionals. Sarah finds the greatest joy in helping her clients increase the visibility of their brands so that they can help more patients, reach more people, and bring more awareness to the SLP profession. As with her patients, she helps the businesses she works with find, improve, and amplify their voice. With the help of her team of SLPs, Sarah provides a DIY course on strategically using socials, one-on-one social media coaching services, and done-for-you social media management for some of the most well-known brands in the healthcare world. When she's not leading her team of content creators and keeping it real on the reels, she's momming two Frenchies, Betty White and Jack Black, and bringing optimism and positivity to the Instagram community. She is an avid traveler, scuba diver, and oral care advocate. Sarah, thank you so much for coming today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about this.
Me too. And this is not like our typical topic that we usually discuss when you've come on the podcast in the past. We're going to talk about using books as a tool to target multiple goals today. Is there anything else you want to add to that bio before we jump into our questions?
Well, I guess I need to add that I'm an author to my bio.
That's so
Uh, Yeah. So I am an accidental author. I didn't intend on becoming an author, but I am the author of Short and Sweet Stories, an interactive book for speech and language.
And I bought that book and I love it. My daughter is not quite old enough and I don't have any clients that I can use it with at the moment, but you're going to talk way more about it and what's included, but it's so well done. So I can't wait to share it listening.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that you have enjoyed it.
So why don't we just start with why did you write the book in the first place?
So the book actually was never supposed to be a book. Whenever I very first got out of grad school and I was in my CF, I was working in the schools and they gave us $100 for supplies for the entire year. And anyone who has worked in the schools knows that that's not enough. It's not even close to covering what you need. And especially as a new grad where you're starting from scratch, basically, you don't have a trunk full of materials and toys and all the things that you need. And so I was searching on Pinterest for free speech therapy materials, and I discovered Teachers Pay Teachers. And that led to me starting my own TPT store and a blog and an Instagram and all the things to support it. And these stories were actually something that I had written just to use with my students. I had a caseload of like 79, I think, a huge caseload and such diverse goals and such limited availability for my students. And so I might have a group of 5 and they all had different goals. And so I needed one activity that I could use to not only keep them all engaged, but also to target whatever goals that they had. Maybe someone was working on R and someone else might be working on like past tense or WH questions or, all different kinds of goals. And so I found that using stories, I was able to target pretty much anything that I needed to. It was very engaging for them. They enjoyed them. And then by writing these phoneme specific stories, then I could also target articulation. And so each story is, I say, phonemes specific. And so if you have an R kiddo, there's Red Ruby the robot and her friend Rupert the rabbit, and they go to Mars, and it's just this story filled with R words. And, if you are working on S, then you have the Cinema Sisters, and they talk about San Francisco and Texas, and just very rich with that phoneme that you're trying to target. And so it's great because they're getting lots of like auditory bombardment while you're reading it, but then you can also work on language and do those WH questions and inferencing and all kinds of other language skills where they're going to be practicing that phoneme. So it really, I feel like for a lot of kiddos, it can be very all encompassing and target a lot of their goals with one activity that feels like fun and they enjoy. And the stories are kind of silly. So it doesn't feel like drill work by any means, but it's getting the job done that we need to.
I love that. Yeah, it's super creative. So, what are some added benefits to literacy besides speech and language development?
So there's a ton. There's a whole laundry list of other benefits. But one of my favorites is just like the relationship building and the connection that comes with sharing a story. And I remember growing up, my mom read to us all the time. And then seeing her with my nieces and nephews whenever they would come spend the night or come down to the lake for the weekend. She just was constantly reading to us. And that is such a bonding experience. Usually if you're reading to a kid, you're in close proximity to them. It's a calm, quiet environment. It's a very safe environment for them. You're giving them your undivided attention. That is an environment that really facilitates connection. And so that is my favorite added benefit of reading. But it's also shown to support cognitive development, language skills, academic success, attention, imagination, creativity, and just, I think by creating that like lifelong love of reading, you're almost building like little eternal students. Because if we learn to love reading, you know, that's like one of the best ways to understand something without necessarily having experienced it. So whenever we read to kids and we expose them to all different types of subjects and concepts, we're building their understanding of the world around them, but we're also cultivating this sense of curiosity and showing them here's like this tool that you can use to continue learning. And like that is such a gift, not just for their elementary or middle or high school or even college years, but for the rest of their life. I think that it just changes the way that you look at the world and like what information is available to you and how you access that.
Yeah, no, those are all like really great points. And what a gift to give a child, outside of just like their speech and language goals, but incorporating literacy as well so that they can use those skills for the rest of their life. I love that.
Yeah.
So, what has been your experience as an SLP using books in therapy?
So even before I had written these stories, I was using books with a lot of my kiddos. And, you know, I think sometimes we think, oh, well, that's sitting down and reading word for word. And that's not always the case. You're saying your daughter's not quite old enough for short and sweet stories yet. And I often would have books that weren't necessarily age appropriate, but whenever they're filled with pictures and, different concepts within those pictures. There's so much that you can talk about, and you don't even have to read the words on the page. And I want to give a little shout out. So my niece is actually the illustrator for the book, and she did such an incredible job of just creating very whimsical, like visually captivating pictures all throughout the book. And she has a 20-month-old, and he loves the book. Like, he obviously can't read. He's too young to really like get any of these stories, but loves to just flip through it and point. And she points and talks about what she's seeing. And, she's seen words and sounds develop in him just from the pictures and just like sharing that joint attention activity. So that was something that I would use even with like my youngest clients. And then with my older kids that are in upper elementary, middle school, we would use whatever they were reading at school and work that into our therapy sessions because it was more meaningful to them, especially if it was something they were interested in. That definitely helped. But if it was something that, they needed to read for school, it was like they felt like, okay, she's helping me with more than just this speech and language thing that I'm working on. Like, she's more invested in my life, and it's not just this like 30-minute chunk of the week that she cares about. So again, like, that contributes to connection. And I feel like books are so universal as far as like what you can do with them. And so I used them all the time.
Yeah, no, I did the same. Like when I was working in the schools, we had a book of the week and it was themed most of the time. And then all of the activities revolved around that. And it's so dynamic. You can cover so many different goals. And I think I should clarify with my daughter, it actually isn't an age thing, it's an interest thing. She is like in an princess only phase right now. So if it doesn't have princesses, it is not, and Disney princesses specifically, it's not
Mhm.
really an interest to her. But she's lately been like going back to the Eric Carle books. So I think maybe we're getting out of that window now. And I'm here for it because like, you can only do so much with princesses all of the time.
You're
Yeah.
like, that's enough of that. Let's move on to the next preferred item.
And I think like, like, it lends itself to the idea that you just keep reintroducing, and, like or make it accessible. So we do have, like, a bookcase where you can see all of the titles that she has. So, she'll go and pick princess titles for a month, but right now she's like starting to pick other ones. So, like making those books accessible and just keep like reintroducing different genres, different topics are helpful too.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think that's important across like, not just books, but all activities. And it makes me think of like feeding therapy. We do that with foods too. Like, as kids gain more like context, then their interests are going to evolve. And yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And I forgot about like the food thing. Yeah, these toddlers are very picky. Thing you're gonna get them on. So, that makes a lot of sense, and makes sense that it's across the board. It's not just books, it can be foods as well and
Mhm.
activities too. So yeah, colors, all of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. My niece that I was talking about this, she has the 20-month-old. We were talking about how one day you can offer him a toy or a book or a food and he loves it. And then the next day he acts just completely offended that you would offer him such a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then
I
we're back to loving it again.
Yeah, I totally get that. So, let's talk about the research on using literacy in therapy.
So, one of my favorite snippets of research is from the National Association of the Education of Young Children and International Reading Association.
The long one.
And yeah, like I have to read this word for word because it's a long one. But they said it is the talk that surrounds the reading that gives it power, helping children to bridge what is in the story and their own lives rather than just the vocalization of words. So, introducing reading into a young child's life and the conversations that it will prompt helps them to make sense of their own lives especially at a young age. And I love that because, we don't know always like what goes on at home for the kids that we're working with, whether that's school or private practice or any setting that we're in. And so I love that reading and using story kind of gives them like almost like a portal into another world. Like it helps them to make sense of, what's going on in their life and find similarities in the stories, but it also helps them to see that, other people may have different experiences and that there are different experiences available to you. And so I love that, they talk about bridging what's in the story and their own lives and kind of this like integration of information. But the beginning of that they shared it is the talk that surrounds the reading that gives it power. And I think that's so powerful as a speech therapist, like, thinking about not reading every single word on the page, like that's almost better because it's the conversation around the story that is where you may have the light bulb moments and you may have that huge growth in imagination and just kind of opening their eyes to different perspectives and experiences and opportunities.
Yeah, that's for sure. Recently I was taking Elizabeth, the reading SLP, her Orton Gillingham course, and she mentioned the concepts of window and mirror text. Have you heard of that before? I had not heard about that.
Mhm.
But
Uh-uh.
it reminds me of what you were just talking about because the window text are reading to find out information about like other cultures, but then a mirror text is reading to find out information about your own culture.
Mhm.
So I know that Shantae, like she talks about diversity and inclusion in books. So like for her, that would be an example of like a mirror text. And a lot of the clients that we serve are from marginalized communities, but we might be sharing with them more window type of text versus more mirror text. So
Yes.
I never heard of those two concepts before. And it just, I guess it's like another way to name kind of what you're already doing, but apparently there's a concept out there already.
Yeah. No, I've never heard those terms, but I mean, that's exactly what you experience whenever you're sharing a story with a child.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You said that was the reading SLP?
Yes, and I don't know if it's like I don't think it's her idea. Maybe it's based on Orton Gillingham because the
Mhm.
course is based on the Orton Gillingham framework. This is all very new to me. I mean, using books, knowledge of like the foundations of literacy and the research behind it is not new, but just diving into like reading approaches is new and
Yeah.
like a personal interest of mine because you want to know as a parent what is the right way to teach your child to read when there's such a reading crisis out there? Like
Mhm.
people are missing the mark, and you don't want to leave that up to chance with a teacher
Mhm.
or anybody who's educating your child. So, like, just arming yourself with information about what is the
Mm.
best way. And it's like very systematic, it's very structured, and it's research based. But some people just miss the mark, and then we find out kiddos have trouble with reading like come third grade when the
Right.
academic stuff gets a lot more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Thinking about like marginalized populations and at-risk populations, that was one piece of research that I had found from Hutton et al. 2017. They were looking at-risk preschool age children, and they found the maternal shared reading is positively correlated with brain activation that supports complex language, executive function, and social emotional processing. And so, like, thinking about how those contribute, all of those, like, I don't know, foundational skills really contribute to like the performance that we see at school. And, whenever you get up in those older grades, like middle school and beyond, how those, like, if we don't have that foundation, how that can impact really the rest of your life. And I think, obviously anyone listening to this is probably an SLP or adjacent, like OT or somebody, that has a servant heart also. And so we want to help those kiddos and prevent that situation from coming to light in middle school. And I think that it's so encouraging to know that a tool as simple and maybe even archaic as a book has the potential to like support those skills and to support them, not just in their speech and language goals, but like the rest of their life. I think that's pretty powerful and very encouraging to consider.
Yeah, for sure. Would you mind doing like a little book walkthrough for us?
Oh, yeah, I would love to. So, these are some of our characters. I mentioned Red Ruby the robot, and she was actually my very first story that I ever wrote.
Oh, you were working on the R sound, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, this is available on YouTube. If you're listening to this on the podcast right now, Sarah is doing a walkthrough on YouTube.
So you can see a list of all of the stories. And so, like, another popular sound that I feel like we work on a lot is the L sound. And so we have Laura likes to laugh. And we have Clint and Blake ski Mount Blossom for your L blends, Richard and Miranda. There are vocalic R friends, and we've got R blends, S blends, TH. We've got basically every phoneme that you could possibly target in speech therapy. And then I love this part. We dedicated it to my mom, and because she really introduced us, both myself and my niece, to our love for reading. And so we dedicated this to her.
That's so sweet.
Yeah. And then we kept the text on each page pretty minimal so that it wasn't visually overwhelming and you had plenty of like visual, like just photo and visual stimulus to go with it. And then at the end of each story, you have WH questions that go with the story. So you're not having to think of those on the spot. They're already written into the book for you, and you can use those for any of your language goals that you need to address. And so they're WH questions, but there's also some inferencing and like social situations worked into those questions. So it's more than just like basic, simple WH. And I feel like with any therapy tool, like you take what you need and you leave the rest. And if it's not appropriate for your specific kid, then you just skip right over it. Let's see, I'll show you Red Ruby. So this is Red Ruby the robot and Rupert the rabbit. And they rode a rocket to Mars or on Thursday. And Rupert took carrots and rainwater for the ride. And Red Ruby took red peppers and orange juice to share.
I love that.
So yeah, so you can see there's just lots and lots of R all throughout.
Yeah.
Um,
And the pictures are so cute.
didn't she? I'm so proud of her.
Yeah,
Like,
they're awesome.
so I'll show you. I say niece, and a lot of people think like a 5-year-old, but I have a very different family dynamic. And so I became an aunt at 8, and Savannah was born whenever I was 12. And so she is my niece that illustrated it. And people are like, wait, is she your cousin? Like, no, I promise she's my niece. But yeah, she is an artist. And whenever it dawned on me that I wanted to turn these stories into a book, I realized, I need an illustrator. And I immediately was like, hey, I know this is crazy. I know you've never done this, but do you want to illustrate a book? And she was like, okay. And so she was actually, let's see, she had a 6-month-old at the time that we started. And I don't know how she did it because she did a lot of all-nighters and then would get up and be a mom all day during the day. And she's an ASL interpreter and would go to work and then stay up at night and draw for short and sweet stories. Yeah. Yeah. And it was really like special to do together. She's my best friend, and it was really cool to get to share this and just show off her talent to the world too.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you both got to do it together and honor.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. Sarah, this has been a pleasure as always. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up today?
I don't think so. Maybe if you've ever had an idea or you have ever thought about publishing a book, do it. You can totally do it. This is a self-published labor of love. It's not something that is going to make you millions, but it is worth the energy and time that you put into it whenever you see it in the hands of your friends and their babies and their clients. And you see that, it's impacting so many more people than you ever could individually. So if you're listening and you've ever thought about doing it, go for it.
That's a great way to end this episode. And where can everybody find and connect with you?
So on Instagram, I am short and sweet speech, and I'm also social.moguls. And then if you want more information about the book, it's available in hardback and paperback on Amazon. And you can also go to shortandsweetstories.com to get a little better look at what's inside of it and more on the backstory of it.
Amazing. Thank you, Sarah. This has been a pleasure as always.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. By the way, have you joined the SSU crew yet? By joining, you get access to the free goods section on our website, plus podcast updates, special event notifications, and therapy inspiration. You can sign up at bit.ly/join SSU crew, all lowercase, or just find the link in this episode description. Also, don't forget to take a screenshot of this episode so that you can always refer back to it and share it on social media if you really love the topic. Take care and remember to always fill your Speechy Side cup first before you can pour into others.